Welcome to the IP2 podcast. I'm Shea Ashby, and as always, I'm joined by Felix Chung. Today we are joined by Chris Smith, also known as Smithel in the online space.
Chris is the founder of the Flesh and Common Blood League, which is just kicking off its 6th season. Chris is an active part of the overall Fab community online and is an outspoken Fab dad and overall advocate for accessible games. He is a competitive player. He's won a skirmish as well as participating in callings, battled hardens, and other such events. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. I mean, it's always a good time to, get out and talk to folks, especially, other members of the community, and finally getting able to, put faces to names is always a plus. So appreciate you guys bringing me on here.
Not a problem. Can you give us a little bit of background in your maybe day job, gaming history, whatever you want to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of day job, things like that, I mean, I've been kind of all over the place, since graduating college. Gosh, well over, I don't know, what year is it? 2023. It's been about a decade. We'll put it that way. It's been a while. So it's one of those things that, I've done everything from, working in the metals industry, the financial industry, did sales, currently do pricing in the paint and coatings industry. So, I mean, it's a little bit of everything. I guess you could say marketing is kind of a big umbrella. Yeah. Background in games, outside of Flesh and Blood, I've always kind of been a gamer, like my entire life. Super NES as a kid, N64, all that kind of good stuff. I mean, I long for the GoldenEye days from N64 to come back.
Do you actually though? Do you miss not being able to hit anything? Come on.
You're talking about you mean aiming with the C buttons wasn't the best thing ever?
Oh no,
I loved it.
You're one of those.
I used to. My friends used to hate me. I used to always love proxies and just like putting them on like the underside of doors and things like that when they opened. It was a good time. But yeah, so I mean, I've always done kind of gaming in that respect. I was an admin for, if you ever played Heroes of the Storm, which is like kind of Blizzard's MOBA. Yeah. I was an admin for the Nexus Gaming series there whenever they started kicking off. I did that for quite some time, did some streaming in that, captained my own team, all that kind of good stuff. Ran 2 podcasts, one for Legends of Runeterra, ran a podcast for Valorant as well, before kind of, having a family and kids and all that kind of stuff, which took me a little bit away from the podcasting scene. So I mean, I've kind of been in and out, various different avenues of gaming, including board games, other card games, all that good stuff, for a good while, if not most of my life. But, really settling in here for Flesh and Blood and really digging the community here.
Nice. You kind of mentioned family briefly. You also seem really busy up until family. How did, starting a family shape your gaming life and your podcasting to where it is today?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was funny whenever we were going to have my first kid, my daughter, I kind of went through this like pre-midlife crisis, I'll call it, of like, oh my God, like I want to, like, at that point I never built a PC. I was like, I really want to build my first PC. I want to do all this kind of stuff. And so I kind of went all out. My wife was very supportive about it. I mean, and she's like, look, it's fine. Do what you need to do. And so that's kind of what got me like real deep into it. But honestly, without kind of my wife's support, it would have been very, very difficult to do a lot of the stuff that I did. Her being able to kind of juggle the kids, especially like even nights like tonight, like helping get them in bed and all that kind of stuff, so I can record and talk to folks, or go to armory events, anything like that. It certainly is. It's tough, but you find ways to make it work. Luckily, my kids are getting a little bit older, so it makes things easier. I mean, they're both kind of in grade school. My son's starting kindergarten this year. He's our youngest. Okay. And so, I mean, it's easier when they're a little bit more self-sufficient and not like, hey, I have to constantly change diapers. I have to do all that kind of stuff. But it is a juggle. I mean, anybody that, has a family, kids, even just, part of a family, or even like, in school, they get that. It's all about kind of work-life balance is the way I kind of call it. But instead of work, it's like game life balance. I mean, and we were talking briefly before we started recording about kind of just, balancing that competitiveness side of like, okay, I got to constantly be in and keeping up to date with things, but then also saying like, look, it's a game. I want to have fun. I want to do what I need to do, and enjoy that aspect of it as well. So, my buddy here in Pittsburgh, Schaefer, we had him over this weekend, and we had like a little get together with some of our significant others that don't play Flesh and Blood, but like board games. And he said something that I liked a lot, which was basically like, hey, you could be a gamer and enjoy board games as a hobby, but TCGs are kind of like a lifestyle. Like you really have to dive into them and constantly be thinking about them or keeping them on the forefront of your mind to make sure you're understanding what's going on. Even if you don't play hyper competitively, you still got to kind of have a good idea of what everybody does just to play. So it's interesting, but it's definitely a balance, as I'm sure a lot of people are aware of.
Yeah, my wife has, I guess, bought into my hobby in Flesh and Blood, and we work our schedules around things like the podcast or armories. They're kind of set when we're going to do like Wednesday armory, so make sure that she's putting our daughter to bed, and then if I go to Saturday or Sunday armory, I take the kid with me to give her some space. So we try to work together on making sure that as much as I'm taking my share of the pie to have fun, that she is also able to get hers whenever she does want it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and what's nice too, at least about the kind of the Pittsburgh scene, is we've kind of exploded over the past year or so that I believe every day of the week there's a potential armory within like an hour of me. Wow. So even if like, I primarily go to Green Tree Sports Cards, as part of like the team and everything that I'm on. Mm-hmm. And the past month or 2 months has just been insane where I can't go to armories consistently. But, there's another one about 20 minutes away from me called the Facey Goblin. I started to go there Sunday afternoon. So it's like, being able to kind of coordinate with the wife, like you said, of saying, hey, look, you have something going on, or, hey, you've been, pulling a lot of the weight. Let me step up.
Yeah.
There's generally other days you can find ways to make it work, which is nice here.
Yeah. So you're on a team, you mentioned. What is the team and what are the expectations for like somebody like you, a dad, surrounding that being on part of a team?
Yeah. So the owner of Green Tree Sports Cards, John, he, when we started to really get into it, like I believe it kind of kicked off of him saying, hey, look, I'm going to buy jerseys for everybody. We're going to go out, represent the store, like be a good time. But we all started to get a little bit more competitive about it. And he put an offer out saying, look, I'm really interested in kind of really honing in on the team and kind of putting our heads together to kind of build decks and determine what we want to do. But here's the commitments that I'm looking for if somebody is going to be on this team. And, some of it was like, hey, we're having practice like in person 2 days a week. And immediately I messaged him saying like, oh, John, this sounds like something I'd be interested in. I love the idea of it, but being full honest here, I have 2 kids. I have a wife. The store isn't particularly close to me. That I said I can't do an armory and then come out 2 days a week for in-person practice and things like that. But I'm happy to like kind of sub in or volunteer if people need it. And he said, no, look, he goes, well, I also want to do like virtual practices for people that can't make it. Like Jeff O is on the team, and I don't know if you know him, but he does a lot of like merch and things like that for like shirt creation, all that kind of good stuff. But he used to be local. He's now like in the middle of Pennsylvania. So, he's like, look, for folks that can't make the in-person frequently or have other commitments, here's the expectation for like running Talishar, being on for team practices and how many, matches we want you to complete in a week and all that kind of stuff. And so I was able to kind of do that and balance that out, which is a plus. And it's a great group of guys and all that good stuff. So, I mean, it's definitely commitment a little bit above, I'd say, the casual end of things.
Yeah.
But what I like about it is, I always tell the group, it's if one of us wins, we all kind of win. And that as long as there's somebody there getting to top 8, if I see that mat, to me, it feels good. It's like, hey, look, that's a proud moment for me. Mm-hmm. Certainly it's one of those things that, while we don't, do anything wrong or anything like that, if like we get to, let's say me and a teammate are on that bubble for top 8 and I already have, let's say, a Nats invite or I already have something like that and they're still looking for it, generally speaking, it's like, hey, if you want to concede to a teammate or something like that to help them, get greater team representation,
Yeah.
we've talked about that and like, having those options. So it's kind of good in just trying to find the way to kind of improve everybody in the local scene, just get better, regardless of if they're not on the team or not, like the competitive team, we say. It's one of those things that we're just constantly trying to look out and trying to make sure that, like, hey, if you're in the Pittsburgh scene and you really want to get into it, we're going to do everything we can to get you up and running in the game and then get you to whatever level of competitiveness that you want to be.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, John's a great guy. It's a really good thing. He's a madman with prizing, like the local events and things like that in Pittsburgh. It's a lot of fun and really, really cool. So
Nice.
yeah, it's great.
Back about 3 minutes ago at the start of that question, you you had talked about being part of a team and sharing in the successes of your teammates. That to me kind of spoke a little bit about being sort of like a dad on a different level for those that don't have children and don't really know what it's about. Being part of a testing group or a team, if you don't do well, but you see somebody that you've worked with find success, whether it's make a top 8, top 4, or even win even a local event, you get to share in that joy. Even though you didn't win, you feel like you helped, you had some part of success in that. And that's sort of like a small way of like what it kind of feels like to be a dad or a gamer dad, at least it is for me. So I don't know how you feel about that.
No, it's very similar because so let's say, for example, I'm going to use two of our teammates, Tim and Devin. When we were getting ready for an RTI, they were working on an Azuri list, and it was really kind of cool to watch it evolve because they're building this, and it was like almost like their baby, and it was like, okay, we want this deck to perform. Where like Devin said, like, hey, look, I'm going to play it. I'm going to try to do well with it, but even if I don't do well and somebody else is running it, it's like, just throw out my name, like give me credit for helping build the deck and things like that, because like I feel proud of what I've created here.
Yeah.
And so that it's very much like you said, like having a kid where it's like, hey, look, I may not be the one hitting the little league home run kind of thing, but I've helped my kid develop those skills, or I've helped my kid find that interest and grow and be the best that it can. It's very similar. I mean, we have people on the team that are pretty well versed in every hero, enough to the point that, if we're building a deck or if we're trying to tech into something or make something better, we know that there's folks in the group that we can call upon to really give insight. And granted, we're not all, number one pro tour, winners or anything like that. But I mean, it's interesting to see just how like kind of like that collective mind set could really improve and bring out decks, because we've all greatly improved, even just by saying, like, I always tell people, like, I'm the stepping stone, like use me as practice to get there. I know I'm never going to be the person that can guarantee go to Worlds every time, and afford it and all that kind of stuff. So if I can't make it, it's my goal to help somebody improve against the heroes that I know well enough that they can.
Nice. Staying with the family aspect, how have you structured your family and work schedules to allow you to participate in weekly events and larger tournaments, and also your online community that you're a part of?
Yeah, so when it comes to the online community, it's a little easier because that's, to me at least, a more structured thing of saying, hey, there's weeks and then there's kind of long break periods between, that it gives me time to step away and say, okay, look, let me do some family time. Let me, give them the attention that I need, because I may have been a little bit more absent the past 5 or 6 weeks, talking to individuals and making sure the league runs smoothly for that season. So that kind of helps that it's, kind of like an on-off season. That's one of the big reasons why I didn't want it to go, every week, 52 weeks a year.
Yeah.
I said, look, I want to give kind of big chunks and then take breaks, big chunks, take breaks. Also because the people that participate in my league, most of them have, pretty busy outside lives as well. Most of them have families, or are married or in school or things like that, that I'm like, this it's a hobby and we all love it and we all do it. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's a hobby. Nobody's going to be, a pro based off of how they perform in my commoner league,
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
want people to come in, have fun, meet the community members, like really get to know them,
yeah,
and build those relationships, but then have that off time to maybe say, I got a little bit of confidence. I was newer to the game. I played in the commoner league. I'm going to go to an armory, or
yeah.
maybe I'm going to do a battle hardened or a calling or something like that, because everybody seems nice, and I want to meet the people in person.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a good deal to me. Um, in terms of kind of like my work life and things like that, and being able to find the time, I'm extremely lucky in that I got a pretty stable job that, as long as I kind of know what's coming up, I could plan vacation time around it. Certainly, if it's somewhere close, giving the option for my wife and kids to kind of come travel with me is always a plus.
Yep.
There was an event earlier this year just out near Columbus, Ohio. And I said to my wife and kids, I said, look, come with me. I said, there's a Lego land about like an hour away from the hotel that I want to stay at. You could take the kids there for the day while I'm playing cards. And then like we still get to spend that time together on the weekend, which is a plus. So finding ways to kind of incorporate the hobby into your life is kind of necessary, especially like as you get older and you have
Yeah.
those family commitments and other things going on. That's always kind of huge.
With access to like armories every day almost, and even online stuff as well as your league, do you find you have a comfortable pace that you can play the game at and still do family life when it arises and it doesn't interrupt too much?
100%. Like I said, I mean, this summer is kind of a great example for that. Where, my wife, she has a very successful career as well, and she travels, normally once a week or so for work. That puts me kind of like on solo dad duty, where I have to be there for the kids. I have to make
Yeah.
sure that everything's going on. I don't have her support to lean on at that point because she's not here. But it certainly helps in those kind of situations of saying, okay, look, I've been extremely busy with family things, but maybe we don't have something going on this Friday or this Thursday to the point where I can sit there and say, I'm going to step away and make sure that I have me time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because my wife always jokes saying, she prefers me to go, once a week or once every other week, at least to something,
Mhm.
because she's like, I can tell whenever you don't, because you just get anxious or you get really uptight. Like you need that moment just to unwind and have fun and kind of reset the stress clock, and kind of hang out with the friends. So her understanding that that's what I need for my mental health
Yep.
is being able to kind of have that hobby or that unwind moment certainly helps, not feel like I'm stepping away or I'm, doing something that puts her in a rough position with the kids or, fully relying on her to kind of raise the kids. Because it's one of those things of saying, she understands that's what I need and I understand what she needs. And we kind of, work together on those aspects.
Nice. It's really important, or that's really good that you were able to recognize something like that, that you can both work towards each other getting your time of need, because everybody needs their personal me time, and whatever facet that is different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I spent, oh goodness, 13 years trying to get my wife to find a hobby, and
Mm-hmm.
she finally joined an axe throwing league.
Oh, cool.
And I spent years trying to encourage her to find something to go do, and she could never find the thing that worked for her. And her best friend was like, I'm going to go do this axe throwing league. What do you think? And I'm like, go do it. Go try it. And she's like, well, what if I become better than you? I'm like, great, be better than me at axe throwing. That's totally fine. You need your time. You need and I find also like for my wife in particular, so devoted to the family and the child life that that's all they think about.
Mm-hmm.
And that also takes a toll on them when they see, you're out having fun and they're always stuck at home. Sometimes you can get into like a little bit of scrap with your significant other, I guess. And so it's just really nice to hear that not only are you getting your work life balance, but you're also finding a way for your wife to have her work life and family life balances. And I find that very important
Mm-hmm.
for my life as well.
Yeah, and the one thing I always tell people and I'm trying to learn is like my wife, while she loves board games and things like that, flesh and blood type games like TCGs, like hyper competitive TCGs are not her thing. She's been nice and entertained me a few times and gone to an armory and all that kind of stuff. But like, I'll be like, hey, we're doing like WTR draft tonight. Do you want to come? And she goes, can I play Fi? And I go, well, no, he's not in WTR. She goes, well, then I really don't want to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've had to kind of accept that I can't keep pushing it on her. And
Yep.
So your example of like your wife finding axe throwing and that is great because we're currently like in a similar position where she's like, look, I like gardening, I like doing this, but like, we're trying to find a group for her to kind of have that armory like experience with whatever the hobby is important. She did softball through college and high school and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, look, go find a softball league. And she goes, oh, but I hate slow pitch. I can't hit slow pitch. It has to be fast pitch. She's a pitcher, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So like even now she's excited because as our kids are getting older, she's coaching little league and doing all that kind of good stuff. Which is good because she's meeting a lot of other people in similar positions. So yeah, just finding a way to get out there and making sure that, you're doing what you need and your family has the opportunity to kind of explore their interests and get that free time. And, you taking a step back to make sure you support them as much as you're being supported is certainly huge and important.
Yep.
I've been listening to both of you talk about, very passionately about your families and what you do to make it work as gamers to achieve that happiness on a day-to-day, week-to-week, ongoing basis. And this whole time, I'm thinking to myself, I wish I could bottle up this recording and send it back in time to Felix when I was 18 years old, when I was 20, when I was 22. I didn't know that having a relationship that was so healthy, that was so balanced, was possible. And I guess my question to both of you actually is, what advice would you give to people, I guess thinking about myself as a younger man, let's say around that age, because there are some members of our community that, are of that age, and maybe they're just thinking about these things for the first time. Like, what's some advice that you would give to them about how to find that sort of happiness that it seems like both of you have achieved?
So for me, and again, understanding that everybody's situation's different. I mean, my situation's very different than probably both of yours as well. But for me, the one thing that was important, and it took a long time to kind of get to this point, but was understanding like, hey, look, while people can change, certain aspects of them, you can't expect their entire being to change, and understanding it's not about necessarily fighting uphill battles and trying to say like, hey, you have to be 100% involved in my interest. Like if you don't, you don't love me or anything like that, that's different. And it's also important to understand you can't be reliant upon anybody else for your happiness. Relationship or not, you can't sit there and say like, oh, I'm miserable because X and X, did this. That's kind of a problem that I know I struggled with, early on, is kind of tying my worth and my value into somebody else. And my wife certainly has helped me, overcome a lot of those kind of issues, whenever we did find her. But the one big thing to me too is, and it's funny when you say go back to 18, 19, like, and kind of say, hey, look, it's possible. Is I was in a similar boat where I said, no, it's not like I have to give in or hide, who I am or hide what my interests are from people because it's not the cool thing to do or it's not socially acceptable. And what changed it for me too was, whenever I had kids, the one thing I kind of always regretted growing up was that I was too afraid to, express that I had interest in certain things and hobbies, like card games or like Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or anything like that, to the point where I didn't like really play Magic or really, dive into it apart from collecting some Pokemon cards and things like that until I was, full grown. And at that point I said, well, oh God, I'm an adult. Does it make sense? Am I too old to get into these kind of things? But when I had kids, I said, look, I don't want my kids to ever be embarrassed or feel like they can't do something because of their age or because of who they are. I think it's important that they see that what I'm doing is what makes me happy, regardless of, if their friend's dad does it, or if their mom does it, or their uncles do it, or anything like that. I want them to know it's okay to, be themselves and have that individuality.
I echo a lot of Chris's sentiments in what he said. One of the things, obviously, communication is very important into a relationship, especially when you're younger. It's a lot harder, or at least I found it a lot harder when I was younger, to share with my partner things that may have been embarrassing, to what I think is embarrassing and are not actually embarrassing to talk about. Like maybe it's games, maybe it's whatever movies, whatever your hobbies are that your partner might not be into yet. So I do echo some of that, but some of the things that I find very important is that your significant other becomes either a best friend or a really close friend. And for things like that, you'll usually have some sort of common ground. And if it's board games or movies or sports, whatever it is, that's a great piece of common ground to have with your significant other. But you, at the same time, you also need your own space and time. And it's very important to learn that, I think, at some point in your life, that you need your space. And even if you're good with your significant other and everything that you do and you guys never fight and the world is perfect, having your own space and them having their own space is also really good and refreshing for the relationship. And it's something that you can then have a conversation about with them, where they just get to listen and probably enjoy your interpretation of the situation and imagine it, as opposed to being there. Because when you're always there together, you're just like, yeah. Oh, totally. I understand. But when somebody's not there, you get to share as much about that experience, and hopefully they're engaged and they listen to you, and it helps strengthen your relationship through more communication. So I find some stuff like that really important. And time. I think Chris said it right at the beginning of his response. Like, it takes time to develop yourself and what you're looking for in a relationship. So 22-year-old Felix is a different person than 33-year-old Felix and is looking for different things. And yeah, I just think time and communication and your space together with your partner are some very important things and part of having a successful relationship surrounding hobbies and friends and whatever you do.
Well
Oh,
said.
thank you both so much. I'm not sure if relationship advice will be a regular feature on this podcast, but if people want that, please let us know. Well, no, thank you so much for indulging me. We'll move on to our next topic. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, we've talked about this before on the podcast, is the maturity of the audience that Flesh and Blood acquires seems to be, while also it still acquires young people, but it's acquiring people then in their late 20s into their 30s and their 40s. And a lot of people are in relationships, married with children. And so these topics are important to some people. And hopefully, while we're not in a relationship advice podcast, I hope that some of what, maybe Chris and I are doing that are working for us can help translate to some of our listeners if, they're looking for ways to strengthen their relationship or fix, things that might be a little rough,
Most certainly.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So we'll move on to our next topic here, Chris. And you mentioned you're from the Pittsburgh area?
I am. Yeah, I'm born and raised here in Pittsburgh. It is
Got it.
Before we go any farther, I just want to say Paul Coffey was my favorite hockey player growing up.
I'll take it. It's funny, anytime we start talking hockey in Pittsburgh, though, especially recently, everybody just sits there and brings up how much is Crosby crying. And I'm like, look, it's okay. His hand hurts from all the rings that he has to wear. I get it.
Oh, snap.
He's an incredible player. Yeah.
He is.
Still better than McDavid. Sorry, Edmonton. But just for someone like myself, at least, growing up in Western Canada, Pittsburgh is just a blob in the big blob of giant U.S. Midwest / East Coast cities. So I guess, could you just describe I guess just maybe tell me a little bit about your local community, both in general. Just tell me a little bit about your city and region, and also about the Flesh and Blood community.
So the city in general, it's it's a very weird city to describe in that, uh, it is very affordable to live compared to some of the other major ones, but it also has a enough to do in it that you don't feel like you're, hey, like I'm living out in the middle of nowhere and the big thing to do is go hang out in the Walmart parking lot. You know, my wife comes from a very country kind of area. She grew up near Erie, Pennsylvania, and she was like, her town was right next door to like a large Amish community, to the point where I said there was equal horse and buggies as there were like cars on the road. So I mean, I told her, I was like, I couldn't live there because there's nothing to do. And her here now, she's like, oh, I love that. I'm only ever like a 20-minute drive away from downtown, and always having something to do, whether it be like going to see a show. Pittsburgh has all kinds of activities. Like we just had something called Picklesburg here, I think last weekend, which is just celebrating all things pickles, like in Heinz and things like that. It's very weird, but it's very cool. So it's a good city. I always tell people, it's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to be, even if you're just single. Like the nightlife, activities for, younger single folks is probably just as good as it is for like, I say older folks like me that are like, okay, look, I need to be back at home like by 9 p.m. so I can go to bed. Like
Yeah.
there's plenty to do, which is kind of good. In terms of the flesh and blood community and things like that, I would say we have probably and I know I'm a little biased, but have the nicest community around. And that, I think it's one of the things
Yeah.
that drew me into it. And I think Shea, you brought it up saying like Flesh and Blood, it's unique to other card games and things like that I've been a part of, just due to the demographic that I tend to see. And so whenever I was kind of starting to get into the game and posting online, an individual, he's also big in the Twitterverse and Flesh and Blood scene. His name's Matt. He goes by Sin on Stream and things like that on Twitter. But he reached out to me and was like, hey, look, this is going on Green Tree. Come hang out. And, it took, a little bit of time before I felt comfortable enough to go out to an armory, because I felt like, hey, if I mess up, I'm going to be ruining the time for everybody else. But I mean, you walk in, everybody's like, this is your name. How you doing? Like they took the time to get to know you, which was absolutely amazing. To the point where like anytime somebody new comes, we always laugh. Like they leave like with like one of those 1,000 count like BCW boxes of just bulk. Like, hey, look, what do you need?
Yeah.
Like, here's everything to get started. Here's all like my rares and my commons and things like that I don't need. Please build what you want. I mean, heck, we've had people just like open a pack, get like a duplicate of a legendary that they have, and was just like, hey, new guy, here's like an Arcanite skull cap. Like, by all means, like,
Nice. Yeah.
here you go, get started. And I know one of the things is too, like, bringing back Green Tree Sports Cards, John, whenever we were starting to grow, like, what makes him successful in his store, in my opinion, is not only does he, run a successful business and collect and sell and do all that kind of stuff, but it's somebody that just loves playing the game, to the point where whenever like his store started to get, packed and he couldn't play every week at armories and things like that, he was like, look, I'm putting a bounty out here, whoever can get another store to have, events like, so I can start playing, like, I'll just give you a box of, I think it was like Uprising or something at the time. And so, we all said, okay, look, what can we do to get the community to grow and go above and beyond? But I mean, it is, I consider everybody kind of in the Pittsburgh Flesh and Blood scene, like kind of like an extended family to me. I mean, when we went to the Calling Indianapolis, we rented a house and it was like the best time. I mean, I have a picture that I love on my phone of us all just going out to breakfast, like in our matching jerseys and things like that, just sitting at a
Nice.
table. And it is the absolute best. I mean, I always tell people, I said, look, I love the game. I love playing the game, but going to these events with that group of people is really what I live for. I mean, we have an inside joke when we were coming back from breakfast at the Indianapolis Calling and people were getting ready to go. Somebody stayed back from breakfast. They woke up late or something like that. And we came back and they were watching a tier list on flavors of ice cream. And we spent, no joke, 45 minutes arguing about the tier list rankings that they were watching. And I think more of us remember that from the event than we do our Flesh and Blood matches or what happened.
Yeah.
So
Those are the best
Yeah, I mean
memories.
it's just a blast, and just a chance to go out and, like I said, just spend time with people that share a hobby with you, and just really unwind and get those kind of person to person, face to face connections.
It's incredible to hear you talk about your community with such passion like that because it almost directly mirrors the way Shay and I feel about our community. I mean, even things like going down to a big event and renting a big house together and spending up all night
Mhm.
debating nonsense. And at the end of the day, everyone remembers when all of us rolled out to a hot dog stand and bought like 100 hot dogs. Like that's the exact same thing. So it's incredible. It just reminds me, yeah, there's great communities all over the world when it comes to flesh and blood, and sounds like yours is really really unique and friendly, which is something that we also aspire to be. Do you also have rivalries like we do? Like I think of Pittsburgh, I think of Philly. Like, is there that is does that also come into play, or any of the other big cities?
So yeah, we like, I mean, we kind of do. I mean, like if you're just talking general cities, for Pittsburgh as a whole, certainly like Cleveland, Philly, like all those kind of things are certainly big rivalries. But like when you're sitting there talking like within flesh and blood, yeah, there's a little bit of rivalries between even like local players in the scene, as well as us trying to like just outperform others. Like I know one of the stores that we're really really close with, and we do a lot of things with, like the Pittsburgh store, is the Realm Games, that's currently doing like their 20K and all that.
Yeah. Yep.
While I consider them friends, and like they do amazing events and great stuff with Green Tree Sports Cards in the Pittsburgh scene, it is funny because like when I go there, we always like kind of have this feeling of like, look, we want to perform well in front of those Ohio locals. Like we want to show like that, like we know what we're doing and all that kind of good stuff. So that's always a fun time. But like even like rivalries when we're talking within the local scene is I very much like love playing Warrior and maining Warrior and things like that. And again, I'll bring him up again. Matt sent on stream. He is a very good Runeblade player, and he plays a lot of Briar. And we have played, I swear, every Blitz Armory we get paired into each other at some point. And it has become like he's I think posted one time like, hey, this is the final boss of the armory, and it was me just on my Dory deck, because like we've played so many times and he has yet to beat me, and they've always been close. So I mean that's like a matchup I always look forward to. I like playing against. There's another individual. His name's Vince. He has a Reinhardt deck, and he joined significantly after I joined in the scene. But I said I love playing against him because like it gets better and gets better and gets better. And like we just played in the skirmish this weekend, and he was my last match, and it was probably the best match I've had in a long time. It came down to him just looking for a reckless swing at the very very end because I was on one
Yeah,
health, and I think I killed
classic.
him the turn before he drew it. And so, I mean, there's definitely things of like, okay, I'm going to beat this person. Like, we have Andrew Yager, who's a great Kano and a great Katsu player. And I played against his Katsu deck, I think 4 times or 5 times before I finally beat it. And it was like the best feeling because I was like this SOB is sitting here, like has my ticket every week, and I can't get through it no matter what I bring or what I do. And so finally getting through it's good. And the thing that I like about, like, and I'm sure you're seeing is probably the same way, the way that you talk about them is after matches, we very much like, here's what you should do, or here's how you can get better. It's not you lost to me, I can't tell you. It was this was the moment. This is the decision that changed the whole game. And
Yep.
we're trying to build each other up and kind of improve everybody in that regard, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, we definitely share that spirit of shared learning. How important is that narrative to even someone like yourself, Chris, just enjoying armories and skirmishes and pro quests, having those local rivalries, those people that are your nemesis when it comes to enjoying the game for you?
I mean, to me, I think as long as it's in good fun and good natured, I think it's a great part of the game. The one thing that I always try to tell people is, we'll get a new person in, and you can tell like if after a week, 2, 3 weeks, they're starting to feel a little discouraged because, that's maybe 3 weeks in a row they went 0-3 or like 1-3 or something like that, of like, oh my God, I'm just never going to catch up with these folks. Just reminding them, like, look, like when I started playing, I don't think I won a single armory event for like 3 or 4 months. And then it went like a year without me like getting top in it, and then finally getting another one. But every time I was improving and getting better, and what kind of kept me going is those, good natured rivalries of saying, I need to beat Yager's Kano. Like, I need to figure out a way around this, or I need to get better against Briar because I know Matt's going to play it. And just really starting to kind of tech against your local scene, so that you're getting better, but then also by you doing that, you're helping them get better, because they're doing the same to you, saying, okay, I know, Felix is going to bring this coming week against me, so I'm going to try to throw a curveball. But as long as, like I said, at the end of the day, if everybody's having fun and just doing, what they love and enjoying the hobby, that's always a good thing to have, is kind of those, local rivalries, something to look forward to each week.
Oh yeah, it's just like when Shea knocked me out of our skirmish just a couple days ago. I'll get you next time.
All right, that's a conversation. But then unfortunately, I lost the finals to our rivalry, so I let both of us down.
That's all right.
We're not a rival, Felix.
So, Chris, how competitive do you consider yourself these days? You've talked about juggling your family and your work life, and you're managing your online community. But from your perspective, how competitive do you think you are when it comes to those bigger events and those callings and nationals and all of that?
Yeah, so I mean, when we're talking callings and nationals and things like that, like I know I'm never going to be the next like Brody Spurlock or something like that. Like, I just don't have the time or the energy or the patience to sit through and really analyze every card in line and do what the top pros do. Like, that's fine by me. My competitiveness is sitting there saying, as long as I'm walking away at the end of the day saying I know I performed the absolute best that I could with my deck and my knowledge set, I'm okay with that. I always try to set myself a personal goal of going like kind of 50-50. If I can get to a day 2 of an event or top 8 an event, that's amazing. But my goal is to just consistently try to win more than I'm losing, on a match by match basis. Doesn't always work out that way. When we were doing the Pittsburgh Brawl again for the Rome Games, I brought Azuri and I said, look, as long as I don't parent and old him, or avoid Oldhams going into it, I should be okay for the most part. Round 1 was against Oldham. Round 2 was against Oldham. Round 3 was something else. Round 4 was Oldham. And I'm like, I can't, like, I literally, round 4 was Oldham, and they sat down and presented. I said, you're an Oldham? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I'm just conceding. I said, my brain does not have it in me right now to go another round into an Oldham. I said, and they're like, you sure you don't want to play it? I was like, no, look, I appreciate what you're doing. It is nothing against you, but I just can't, so I'm not one of those people that if I go into a terrible matchup and it's been a terrible day, I'm going to keep plowing through it to keep getting better. I'm just going to say, look, there's side events. There's other things I could be doing. I could be, enjoying time with the community. I'm going to do that. So I like placing myself in the middle. Like I said, when we talk about the team, I like being a part of the team to provide the input, put my brain power to kind of to the test and improve personally. But with it being a kind of, like I said, one of us wins, all of us wins mentality. To me, my competitiveness is saying, what can I do to make, let's say like Pete, do well? Like, we're doing the RTN. He topped 8. He's getting into, or he top 4. He's going to nationals here in a couple weeks. And I'm saying, to me personally, what can I do to make sure Pete performs well in it, or what can I do to make sure Devin performs well in nationals? Like, those are the things that are important to me in a competitive scene, more so than being the person that kind of crosses the finish line first.
Yeah, you touched on a little point that I kind of wanted to go over, was if you're having a bad day, especially at a major event, I think you said it, you're like, I'm just not going to play the game. It's your mental health is probably starting to struggle at that point. So why keep banging your head against the wall? Because we do this for fun, and as ambassadors for the game, like Felix and I would imagine you too, that you don't want to present like a sour apple to the community. You want to try to stay
Mhm.
positive. I think it's a really good thing that you mentioned, that you're like, yeah, I'm just going to take myself out of the situation. We'll erase this from this point on, and we'll go do some side events and see if we can find some success somewhere else, and just not keep going down in the dumps because you're having a bad
Yeah,
day.
I mean, it's one of those things. Like I said, I think that's the most important skill that anybody can have, just even in the game or outside of the game, is being able to take a step back and self analyze where your mindset is at any given point.
Mhm.
And like I said, if you're not having fun, I don't want to be the person that, because I'm having a rough time or because I'm frustrated with my personal performance, that at the end of the match, if somebody extends their hand saying "good game," like that, I don't shake a hand or I don't fist bump and get up. Like, I don't want to ever
Yeah.
become that person. So if I feel myself getting to that headspace that I'm getting frustrated with nothing to do with the person I'm up against, they could be the nicest person in the world. Uh, you know, that's something I want to sit there and take a step back and remove myself from that situation, to rezone and have fun. I'm not saying you can't have fun if you're going into a bad matchup or something like that. I mean, what was it? The day before the Pittsburgh Brawl, Michael Fang came in. We did it in Armory, and I paired into him round one, literally right after he wins the Pro Tour. And that, and he goes to sit down. I said, "Look, before you present the hero, I just want to make sure that you can concede if you want to. I understand if you're afraid." And just having that moment of like joking, like, "Okay, I know I'm
Yeah.
going into a loss here." Just based on who it is and it being probably the
Yeah.
best Oldham player in the world right now, but being able to sit there and say, look, I'm going to joke about it, have a good time, and then let them know, like, look, it's casual in my mind. I'm sure, it's casual for you. And he was super
Mhm.
cool, really, really nice afterwards, like walked me through saying, hey, here's how you could probably perform better into Oldham. And just building those friendships sometimes is always even more valuable than kind of taking the win, is being able to walk away saying, hey, I learned something, or I improved, or, I built a good relationship with somebody.
Even in the outlook that you described, in recognizing what was under your control and what wasn't, and just accepting if something happened that was out of your control and led to a bad outcome for you, in that, being paired against Oldham, something like that, to recognize the controllables and not, is a fairly mature outlook. And I mean, Chris, is that a skill that you've always had, or is that something that you've developed
it,
over time?
it is something that I have developed, and I think everybody can develop. It is something that is hard to do, and people that can do it with no second thought, I'm very jealous of. But I am one of those people that I know I can start kind of going into a downward spiral if I don't find a way to resolve it quickly. And I use the Pittsburgh Brawl one as an example, just because, again, it was a really, really well done event, but I had to leave day one like as early as I could, and because I said, look, I know I'm not going to represent myself well here in the mindset I'm in. I know it's not going to be a good reflection on the team or the city or the event if I'm sitting here just uh, for better lack of term, like flipping tables or something like that about Oldham.
Yeah.
Like it's better for me to sit there and say, look, let the event continue to go. I don't want to be a downer or ruin people's day or anything like that. I'll step away, go home, spend time with the family, come back for day two, and just really try to enjoy it. I think that's something that everybody can develop or work on, even if you're not there yet. And many people do it much better than I do. But yeah, it's something that it is an acquired skill, and certainly I did not have it at the beginning, especially when I was in my more competitive days with everything. When I did a lot of Heroes of the Storm and captaining a team, we had consistent practices, and I was not always the most calm and collected person, because I said, look, I want to win. I'm putting all this time and energy into the team. We've drafted, we've recruited people, and certain performance isn't good. And I said, look, it's a game. People are here for fun. We're not all in the same mindset or same end goal of what we want to get from the hobby. So why would I let that drag somebody else down that maybe isn't feeling the same way I am?
Yeah, you're describing the evolution from results-based thinking to I don't know, like process-based thinking, I guess. Like people are rewarded based on results. First place at the Pro Tour gets the biggest prize, and second gets a lesser prize, and so on and so forth. And that's what we focus on: the winners, the people that went undefeated. But we don't so much talk about the people that could have won but were unlucky, or got paired into nothing but Oldhams or anything like that. And it could happen. I'm
Yeah.
guilty of sometimes being the Oldham.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
or
that's
even personal successes from some
yeah.
other
Yeah,
people.
I think the key is you have to evaluate what is defining success to you. And if you're one of those people that says success to me is, number one in the Pro Tour, that's cool. Like, hey, that's you. I'm going to cheer for you. I'll support you and try to do anything I can to help you get there. But if your success is also saying, I have social anxiety and I just want to step in the door at an event, sit down and play a match. If you do that, I feel like that should be celebrated, just as much as somebody winning, number one. So being able to sit there and quickly define it on an individual level, what is success to you?
Mhm.
I think is kind of critical. And, like you saying, going from like a results based thinking approach, because, you don't have to sit there and think I'm going to the calling to win it, or I'm going to the battle harder to win it. You could just sit there and say, I'm going to it for an experience. I want to walk away remembering this and having a good time.
Yeah, no, that's really insightful. Thank you. And one other thing that I wanted to ask you, Chris, because you have a lot of experience with gaming, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're a little bit older. You have a family and all of that. You must have seen gaming as a whole change over the decades, from when you were growing up playing the Super Nintendo and all of that to now. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, what were some of the big changes in the gaming industry from your perspective?
So, I mean, the big thing, and I don't know why it's so ingrained in my mind as a memory, but I mean, I will never forget when I got the original Xbox, and I hooked up to the internet for the first time. Because again, I mean, I had a PC, but I was never a huge PC gamer. So I mean, there sure may have been some instances of being able to play with people online and things like that, but being able to sit there and take an Xbox, connect it to the internet for the first time, and boot up Halo and just play with people was mind-boggling to me. I mean, it was one of those things of like, I just remember people get like the early days of online gaming, people just getting on a mic and just being like, where are you all from? Like, oh, I'm Pennsylvania, I'm from California. And just, that was just madness in my mind. And it's kind of cool seeing how the social aspect of gaming has evolved over the past like 30 years or so, of how do I take information that, is really, really local to me and spread it across the world. I mean, we were talking about GoldenEye earlier and things like that. I may have been the best GoldenEye player in, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania or something like that. But suddenly when you open it to a whole nother world, you're like, oh my God, these people are amazing. And so being able to kind of see and adapt and really learn from other people's strategies and how they view, a game or view something that, you love, it was a really, really cool thing to see and experience. We always say that, my generation is, we're old enough to know, or we're young enough to know, like if somebody's sitting there saying they need your social security card online or something, it's a scam, but we're old enough that we don't fully get like all like the social aspects, or we can appreciate what things were like before the internet. They're like,
Mhm.
I was kind of that right age of like pre-internet, post-internet days, and really getting to see kind of how the gaming community has evolved around that. Like, gosh, I remember printing out old walkthroughs for like how to beat like Majora's Mask or something like that from the internet, and like
Yeah.
really having to read like, oh my God, somebody wrote this, or this is a good walkthrough and this is a bad walkthrough, and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. So that especially in the TCG space is really, really cool, of saying, look, Mara came up with this deck, and this is what she built, and everybody looking at it and saying, yeah, this is the best version, or like, hey, this is how I would change it for my local scene, is really, really kind of cool to see.
Yeah, even I don't know what the right word is, like the normalization of gaming as a hobby over the last 10 years or 15 years or however long has been pretty cool to see, because I remember some of the advertisements for Nintendo systems and Sega in the 90s, and it was this edgy kid stuff like, shh, don't want your parents to see this, or, it's still almost like it was shameful to be, or it was something that your parents wouldn't approve of. But now it's a great family hobby. Potentially it's something that people of any gender or age or ability could get into. There's something for you no matter what genre you're interested in. Yeah, it's that accessibility as well that has really changed.
Yeah, I will say the one thing I always joke about that gives me hope for the future is like, now that my daughter's in school and things like that, just seeing how accepting kids are these days of like you said, the gaming like hobby or gaming space or just really anything. And I'm sure it's not universal everywhere, but it certainly is here, which is nice. It's really refreshing because, like you said, growing up, many of us felt like we had to hide these kind of interests because it wasn't the cool thing to do. And just seeing people be like, look, I play Minecraft, or like I collect Pokemon cards. Like we gave this year for Halloween, we got those like Halibu packs or whatever for the Pokemon cards that were like 4 or 5 cards or whatever. They're all like go theme.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
And it was like,
yeah.
Like we were like the coolest house on the street. Like kids were running like, oh my God, it's Pokemon. And I'm like, as a kid, I would have loved this, but like I would have felt like I couldn't express how cool that was outside of like my like really close 2 or 3 friends at the time. So like that was really, really fun to see, is like seeing the gaming as a hobby being a lot more widely embraced and accepted, just in mainstream culture.
Speaking of gaming and family, is that something that's important for you to share with your children? You mentioned earlier that your wife plays board games. Is this something that you're looking forward to, that you want to pass on to the next generation?
Yeah, so it is certainly something that I'm hoping my kids take a big interest in. I buy Pokemon cards and things like that for them. They have their own little binders, and like they trade based exclusively on which ones are cute. Like they don't care about rarity or anything like that.
Yeah.
We definitely try to expose it to them in trying to say like, look, we love board games, or I love trading card games. I don't lie. Like if I say, hey, it's Tuesday, I'm going out, it's like, game night. They understand what I'm doing. They always come back and say, hey, did you win anything? What did you get? And I get to show off like, hey, the cool stuff from the prize packs. I give them, and I know people are like, oh my God, Flesh and Blood, the art's so grotesque. I'm like, look, he's a 5-year-old. He doesn't understand what's going on. He's just like, oh, look at this card. And it's like on the floor 2 seconds later. So, I mean, it's one of those things that I'm like, I just want to be open with them about, the hobby. That way they know if they like it, look, there's a resource for it. If they don't, that's fine too. I want them to be able to fully branch into whatever they have an interest in, but also not hide that it's perfectly acceptable if they do something that isn't, like I said, seen as cool, because I'd support them. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's, a good dream or hope of mine is that my kids get into gaming in some sort, whether it be board games, trading card games, video games. Just that way it's something I can share and connect with them on.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. My daughter has very little interest in all of those 3 things: board games, card games, and video games. We've gotten to dabble a little bit. Occasionally she'll ask me if I want to play Super Mario Kart. And I think for her right now, it's primarily she just wants to engage with her father. She doesn't actually care what it is that we're doing, because I'll often ask her if she wants to play Keyforge, or we're starting to play Crokinole, and she's like, sure. But she's not interested in that. She just wants to spend time with her dad. And I can appreciate that. She's 8, so I take her to armories with me. It's one of the ways that I give my wife some space, so she can have some alone time to do whatever she wants to do, puzzle or listen to audiobooks. And by taking my daughter to 2 game stores to engage in Flesh and Blood, I guess not really engage Flesh and Blood. She just kind of comes for snacks, honestly. She brings her crafts. But, I'm hoping that one day that she'll just be like, hey, Dad, I want to try this, or I want to try Pokemon. I see other kids playing Pokemon that are younger than me. She's currently not interested in it, and like you, it's okay. The hope and the dream is there, and all I do is just kind of keep trying to provide an outlet
Yep.
for her to attempt it if she wants to do it. And then one of the things that I also do is I actually don't I try not to open my prize packs, even though I'm like a kid sometimes. I bring them home for her, and she's usually in bed a lot of the times during school. So I leave them on the table for her to open up the packs in the morning because she gets up before I do. And she's pretty funny because she'll just open the packs. And that's it. She just opens them. She doesn't even look at them. She used to look at them and look for the shiny ones because those were the rare ones, even though there might be like a majestic hiding behind the rainbow foil or something like that. So she, I have a little bit of engagement with her in the Flesh and Blood world. And we have tons of board games that are kid-centric that we try and pull out every now and then to kind of help engage with her. Even more so just with reading and math also. It's a fun way to engage in the academic side, if people hadn't really thought of that. But it's kind of my experience with my daughter. And we're always just trying to, show her the next thing, and hopefully she'll get excited about it with us. And if she doesn't, that's okay.
That sounds good. And like I said, I mean, it's funny because you said your daughter's 8, my daughter is 7, so they're very similar in terms of that. But yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah, she has zero interest, but I have not brought her to an armory yet. But she has stopped by at a couple events that like I participated in just to kind of see what they look like, which is kind of cool. So I mean, but like you said, it's just really getting to spend time with them, and for them to spend time with you. So any outlet like that is definitely a win.
Yeah, when she comes with me, it's mostly about like for her is coloring and doing crafts and getting like a bag of chips and some juice or something like that. So she's really good. She finds a way to occupy herself, so she's not sitting there bored and she's not bothering me. So we get to, and she gets to meet the people of the community, and which I think is a very important aspect for socializing my kid, getting to talk to people. And I make her go get her snacks, so she goes up to the cash register and she takes my card and she buys her own snacks. Yep. So just another aspect of trying to like introduce the community to children, because there are some younger people, as well as getting to socialize my kid, because it's very important to me as a parent that my kid can interact with strangers.
100%.
And this is a very safe environment to do
100%. 100%.
Let's talk a little bit about the Flesh and Common Blood League. Can you just give me your introduction to the league?
Yeah, sure. So the whole idea of the league came around because whenever I was starting to look into this, the game as a whole, I was looking into CC, looking into Blitz, and I said, like, I don't have a lot of the cards that I need to play, nor do I feel comfortable in kind of playing the game at a competitive level. And I think when I started, really looking into Commoner, it wasn't even an official casual format yet or anything like that. I think DM Armada's Discord was doing something similar to what ended up being the Commoner roles themselves. And I thought that's kind of cool. And I was like, okay, look, I could build a deck here for like $3-4, try out all the heroes, do all that kind of stuff. And so to me, it was a good introduction point to the format. And it was something that I kind of fell in love with, of saying like, look, it's nice that as the game evolves and as the game kind of continues to grow, not only can the format be used to onboard new people and say, hey, look, if you don't know what a hero's like, or if you don't know how to play the game, here's a low monetary investment that gets you there. And then if you don't like it, hey, you don't have to keep playing or anything like that. But if you love it, you could either continue to use the format to try out new heroes and get a feel of maybe what heroes you like, or you can use the format to sit there and say, I really love the hero I'm playing. How do I take this Commoner deck and evolve it into a Blitz? And how do I take Blitz and evolve it to CC? So the format as a whole, I think, provides avenues for individuals of all different kinds of background and experience of the game and all that to find something in it. I know not everybody loves Commoner, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Again, if people are saying it's not competitive enough or if it's not CC, I get it. It's not for you. I'm not trying to force it to be for you or make you love it. To me, it was saying, hey, look, when I was trying to start to learn to play the game, I needed an outlet and an avenue to do it. This was my solution, is asking, was anybody else interested? And then, as I've started to hear more about it, I said, okay, look, we'll put something together and see if we can get, more like-minded people into it. And it kind of took off. And I said, look, as long as I get enough people to, kind of fire off the league, my goal is always about 20 people per season. Certainly if I get more, that's great. If I get a little under, that's also fine. But to me, it's saying, hey, I wanted to have a strong community feel or community focus first. And so if it's just, 2 or 3 people, while it's not that I don't appreciate them, it's saying it's kind of defeating the purpose. So if it gets to the point where the community says, look, we don't want to play common, or we don't like the league, I'll happily step away from it and go with what the community likes. But if there's still a good group of folks that say, hey, I enjoy it, I enjoy the people that I get to play with and talk to and just play the game, especially because some people may not have a local scene, or people may not be able to play commoner, or say, hey, look, my local scene only does CC, and I'm not a CC fan. Having that outlet or avenue available, I think, is important. And so I just try to make sure that it's there and ready to be utilized if people need it.
Yeah, let's expand on that a little bit, because we've spent a lot of time talking about how passionate you are about your local community in Pittsburgh and how great it is. But this league that we're talking about here is an online league. I'm just curious, why did you start it as an online league and not just focus on, should I say, your strength or your main focus of your locals community? Why do you feel the responsibility to look after those people that may not have a local scene or anything like that?
The reason why I wanted to focus it online, and it's funny that you said, like, hey, look after those people, is because at one point I was, quote unquote, those people. Before I, found Green Tree Sports Cards, that kind of got me started in it. I didn't know. Like, I asked the local store that was open here at the time if they play Flesh and Blood. No, they don't. I checked another store that was close by. They didn't have a community. So I said, look, I really like this game, but I have nowhere to play it. I tried a couple different online armories at the time. Most of them were CC focused. It was right around the Starvo era. And I jumped in. I was like, well, this is no fun for me. So let me get out of this. And like I said a little bit ago, I said, I put the feeler out there saying, hey, look, would anybody be interested in this format? If so, I'll put something together. I'll run it. And we got a large calling, especially initially, of folks saying, there's nowhere for me to play this game, but it seems interested and I want to learn, but I don't want to be a burden. And so I said, look, it's okay. Or like there was people sitting there saying, I want to play this game, but for whatever reason, whether it's, I'm part of a minority group, or, I don't feel comfortable or feel safe in my local scene or anything like that. I wanted to make sure that there was an outlet available out there that they would feel welcomed or accepted, or something that, they would have that resource or have that opportunity available to them. There's granted, since I started doing this, there's been other leagues. Like I know, what is it called? The Pitch Perfect League, the Rainbow League, I believe is what they call it, run by Melody and Elaine. They do a great job representing kind of that segment of the population, or that segment of, our community, that I want to make sure that everybody feels like they have a spot, or they have somebody that's there to play with them. It's also a big reason why the format, at least in my league, we take a little bit of creative liberty with how it's run, in that it's not just a one and done like you would at an armory where you sit down against somebody, you play a match, you win or you lose. But we have a best of 3 format in place, because again, some people may not have the opportunity to play this regularly or go to an armory or something like that. And so to go bring a deck and sit down, let's say against, I don't know, a chain or an IRA, and be blown out in 4 turns or 3 turns, and be like, oh, it's been 10 minutes, but good game, I'm out of here. It kind of feels bad.
Yeah.
And say, okay, well, I got to wait a whole another week to play 10 minutes. So being able to sit there and say, hey, look, if we do a best of 3, hopefully you're having those kind of conversations or that interaction with your opponent of saying, hey, that match went really well. I like the deck that you played. I've been wanting to get into Chain or been wanting to get into IREG. Do you have any recommendations, or can you share that deck list with me? Or, oh, I think I would have had it if you didn't get this card. I never saw it coming. Building that relationship and building that rapport with your opponent, I think, is as equally important as, winning a match. So we wanted to make sure that, on average, people had at least 30 minutes of playtime during a week. Certainly some can go more, some can go less. People could play, more often, say, hey, look, I know we've reported, but do you want to keep playing? That's always kind of good to hear. So I just want to try to make sure that feel and that community continues to grow and continues to feel that way over time. That way, everybody feels represented. Everybody feels like they've had a chance to experience or play the game if they want to, and they have an avenue to do that.
I'm hearing that some of the pillars of the community that you're building are that safe space for people that may not feel welcome at their local game store, or maybe that don't have a local scene, and also just building that rapport and that sense of social gaming, like you described with the best of three format. I guess, would that be accurate? And are there any other, philosophical pillars or core messages that, I guess, guide your decisions about how to manage this league?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's the big one, is just obviously having kind of like that safe and welcoming space for everybody is certainly another reason why we've had people sit there and say, hey, why don't you branch into CC? Why don't you branch into Blitz? Why do you keep sticking with Commoner? Again, because it's relatively cheap and easy to get into. We have probably every season at least one or two people join that say, hey, I'm new to the game, but can we do this? And I always tell people, look, if you're completely new to the game, you have no cards, you want to play, even though a lot of people use Talishar, let me know. I will happily build you a commoner deck and just send it to you. Just help me cover shipping. Like, that's okay with me. Like, I will give you whatever I can to get you into this game, because when I was getting started, I've had, some very nice people help me out as well. So, I try to kind of pay that forward as best as I can. But that's at the end of every season, I always put out a survey and I ask people like, hey, look, if you've played, if you can complete it, I'd greatly appreciate it so we can improve. But that's one of the first questions I always ask is like, hey, look, at any point during the season where you made you feel uncomfortable, like by an opponent, and then at any point in the season, have I done anything that has made you feel uncomfortable? Because again, I may do something that I'm not aware of, and certainly I just want to know if that's the case, so I can always improve and grow as a person. Luckily, we've had no major incidents in all 6 seasons, knock on wood. We did have one minor situation that popped up where, somebody did use an incorrect pronoun. They certainly weren't trying to be malicious or anything like that with it, but it did come off incorrectly. And, at the end of it, both of the two individuals were able to kind of come to a conclusion and resolve it in a way that they both were okay with, and they both continued to play the remainder of the season, which made me feel good about it. So because I said, look, this person was new to the league, and I said to them, look, I don't want you to feel like this is an accurate representation of what you're going to face. I also didn't want to downplay what that individual is going through, saying, oh, you're making a big deal out of nothing, I don't understand. Because even if the person that made the comment, I believe didn't do it in a malicious way, it certainly was valid for the other individual to have those feelings that they felt. So I wanted to make sure like they understood, I understood where they were coming from, and I want to do what I can to make them feel comfortable and safe and have the ability to continue playing if that is what they wanted to do. So that's always kind of important to me, is that no matter big or small, or if somebody feels like they're in the right, they're wrong, that if worse comes to worse, I can come as a kind of a middleman, so to speak, and say, let me hear it, let me see what's going on, and try to resolve this in a way that both people can walk away from it feeling okay with the outcome.
Yeah, without knowing anything about the specifics of the situation that you brought up, it does sound like something that was handled very tactfully. I mean, anytime I think about any sort of online community, I'm sure you can appreciate my mind goes to dealing with bad actors, dealing with trolls, and it's a sad reality sometimes. As the community grows, no matter what percentage of people you believe maybe bad actors, 1%, 0.1%, we're gonna run into them.
Mm-hmm.
And in
Mm-hmm.
person dealing with it, I hope that having to look someone like myself and Shea in the eye, and maybe hopefully we'd be able to handle it internally
Mm-hmm.
versus
Yeah.
versus something online. Is that something that
Mm-hmm.
worries you as your community grows?
It does. I mean, I think anybody that has an online community, even though mine's kind of small fry compared to like, let's say like DM Armadas or somebody like that that's huge in the community, anybody that says that they're not somewhat concerned that there's going to be a bad apple or a troll that comes in, I would argue is probably lying. I mean, you may say your community is great, and if somebody like that comes in, the community will understand and stand behind you and help support you in eliminating or removing that bad apple or dealing with the situation. And that all may be true, but it's never a blemish that you want in your community, no matter how short it may have been. So it is always a concern of mine is that, we will have somebody join that's just going to cause problems. Luckily, like I said, we haven't had that happen yet, but I do have a belief at this point that the majority of my community are repeat participants at this point, that when a new player joins, I feel pretty confident in being able to point them to various individuals saying, if you have questions, go to Capullo or go to Tom from Big Basketball Club. These people have been here since day one. I know that, they share similar values to myself, that if I'm not on or if I can't handle it, even though they're not mods of the of the league in any way, I can trust them because of the seasons that we've played together and participated together, to make sure that they're going to be able to kind of do that. So it's definitely a concern, but at a certain point, you just got to have faith in the community, and you got to have faith that, if something like that pops up, everybody will be able to be matured enough to handle it in a respectful way, or trust that I'm going to kind of put an end to it before it gets too far out of hand. And if I ever fail to do that, I always tell people, please call me out on it. Like, don't feel like you can't say, Chris, you handled that incorrectly, or Chris, what you did there, I take offense to. That's not going to hurt my feelings. That's something I need to learn from. So knock on wood, all good in the clear now. But yeah, it's definitely, I think, a concern that one day that may happen.
Yeah, it sounds like you've identified champions within the community to take a leadership role as well as yourself to supplement and build a strong culture. Just to let everyone know that if something happens, that the community will have their back. And my question would be for anyone that's trying to build a community, whether it's a local community from scratch or another online community, what advice would you give to those people just to keep that community strong and grow over time?
Yeah. So the one thing I'd always say is, as somebody with a little bit of background into kind of content creation, streaming, community growth, all that kind of good stuff, don't build it in such a way that you are doing what you think is going to get you the most participants or the most viewers or clicks or anything like that. If you're doing that, you're often going to find yourself not being true to kind of what's important to you or what you like. Um, I always say I'd rather have a very small closed league of individuals that share similar values and beliefs to myself and I know are, not quote unquote trolls, than, just say, hey, my Discord has 20 million people in it. Like, to me, it's not about the numbers. It's about me doing what I like to do and providing that avenue for people that I believe share similar values. So anybody that is kind of starting a league or starting, a podcast or starting, to stream or anything like that, do what you love first. And even if you're the only one on camera, you're the only one doing it, talk like learning to build that habit of talking to yourself like somebody is watching or somebody is participating is huge. You may have a league of only 5 people to start or 6 people to start. Don't think that that's a failure. Consider it like, okay, look, we got 6 people. Let's make this good. Next season, do I want more people? If so, what can I learn from it? How do I get 7? How do I get 8? How do I get 10? What's your ultimate goal? And recognize the small improvements and the small victories you have along the way. Nobody went from 0 viewers to 1 million viewers overnight, or there's always some work or something behind the scenes that you have to put into it. And so just being able to recognize those small victories along the way is kind of always huge.
You mentioned long-term goals. Do you have any particular long-term goals for your league?
I would love, I think everybody that's kind of and I don't view myself as one, but some people do, a quote unquote content creator for the Flesh and Blood community is to get a spoiler. I always joke I want the commonest, junkiest spoiler preview that they ever come out with. Because I think that would be kind of fun to do is something with the league of being like, hey, look, here's put a bounty on it, being like, look, whoever wins the most games with this, junky, common, spoiled card gets a certain prize at the end or something like that. That's always been, kind of my goal is to give me a junky warriors, or not even warrior, just like a junky common spoiler that, you think is only useful in very, very specific situations. That's my personal long-term goal. Other than that, it's just really just trying to have somewhere that like people are just having fun and just enjoying each other and playing the game. As long as that's going on, I'm happy.
It's a really admirable goal, and fingers crossed that you get a real junky spoiler that people will struggle to fit in their deck.
Yeah.
Just last question about the league here. What is your favorite memory? Something that you can share to inspire others, or something just to give me a good mental picture of what this league is all about?
My favorite memory, I think that I have, we'll use 2. So we did, and it's not common or related, believe it or not, the one, but I did a mini between seasons tournament of saying, hey, look, I want people to play something. And, whoever wins, I commissioned a altar from Andromeda Altars. I said, look, whatever the heroes that wins, I'll get it commissioned out and I will send it your way. And Tom, again, his podcast and everything, Big Boss Book Club, he's a regular in the league. He ended up winning it in the UK. And so being able to get that done and send it to him was kind of a fun thing, because I would always give him hell for playing Oldhim. I hate Oldhim in the worst way, and I think he just needs to go for everything. But he knew that, so you don't
hate Oldhim.
Because everybody does.
I honestly would have had no problem with Oldhim. I honestly would have had no problem with Oldhim in CC if it wasn't for that stupid crown. But that's another story. But I mean, so he won it, and for a while, he was rubbing it in my face, it's gonna be. And so when he got it, I was like, I have to give this to him. But being able to kind of give that to him and have a little celebration with him, even though it was something I didn't like, was rough. Also, whenever I was getting started, I reached out to some folks and was able to, at the very, very beginning, get all kinds of support from the community, which was huge. I got Quiver Time to donate. I had Ultra Pro donate prizing sometimes. I had Paper Collective in the community. They design play mats and things like that, oftentimes with a Flesh and Blood here and a Pokemon. Yep. They designed an exclusive play mat for season 2 for our champion there, which was really, really cool of them. So as a collective overarching thing that I'm always amazed and floored by is people saying hey, I like what you guys are doing with the league. I want to support it, even if it's small in any way. That's always kind of cool to me, is saying, because it's somebody saying, look, I see what you're doing. I see the vision behind it, and I appreciate what you're trying to do for it. Let me help support. That's always just a huge kind of plus to me, and something that I'm always quite proud of, is that people see what we're doing and they like it, and want to give back to other communities just out of, other members of the community, just out of the goodness of their heart. So I'm always extremely grateful for everybody in the past and future that have, helped in any way with that.
Before we wind up with the last couple of simple questions, I do want to thank you for your open and honesty. We touched on some heavier topics this episode, and I appreciate that you gave honest answers and even just self-reflecting on yourself and how you can be better is something that's very admirable that a lot of people, I think, often overlook as something to help grow themselves. So I do want to thank you for that. So do you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with any of our listeners or any of your community members?
No, obviously, first, thanks to you two for having me on. I mean, it's always good just to, get a chance to speak about the league. And, certainly with everybody in the community that, does exist, I'm always kind of honored whenever anybody reaches out saying like, hey, do you want to talk?
Yeah.
Because again, I view myself as like kind of small fry here. So,
Yeah.
so, with everybody that you guys could have reached out to, choosing me for an episode is a huge honor to me. So very much thank you for that. In terms of, the community, I mean, I gotta say, I truly believe the people in my community are some of the nicest folks in flesh and blood. Huge shout out to people like Capullo. He donates, I believe every season since it started, a set of the Heralds. He donates. He donates to good deeds. Tom's been an amazing member of the community, helping people get started. People like John from Green Tree Sports Cards in the past have donated just boxes of product to give away and things like that. So I mean, I'm very proud of the community that we built, the people that are in it. Large, small season, it doesn't matter to me. I'm very, very grateful for all the people that kind of just take time out of their, week every week for, 6 to 8 weeks to sit there and sit down, play some flesh and blood and really, build and establish a relationship with another person, through a microphone or through, in person, if it's local or something like that, is always kind of huge.
Nice. If people want to check out your league or you, how can they reach you?
So I always say the easiest way is to reach out to me via Twitter. It's at Smithel Gaming on Twitter. There is a link to the Discord there. Certainly feel free to join. Discord I will almost always answer as quickly as I absolutely can. But just find me on Twitter, shoot me a message, shoot me a DM, or just comment on any of the weird posts I post. And certainly I will always try to interact and make sure that I'm getting back to folks. But yeah, just, I would encourage you, even if this season has already started and it's too late to join, if you just, have comment related questions or want to poke in and just see what it's about, come to the Discord, check it out. If it's something that interests you, feel free to join up next season. We'd absolutely love to have you.
All right. Thank you so much once again. And for the IP2 podcast, you can find Shea and I on YouTube at IP2 Podcast, on Twitter at IP2 Podcast, on Mastodon, IP2 Podcast at wraith.social. Thank you.
Is it still Twitter at this point, or do we call it X?
Look, I'm never going to call it X.
that I don't know. It's so stupid.
As soon as
even when you're on it, like you'll still like type something. I'll be like, hey,
it still says
tweet,
Twitter.
and I'm like, how's it not Twitter? But I'm still sending a tweet.